All right, so General Baratieri, the Italian commander, had promised that he would return to Rome with Emperor Menelik in a cage. So, what really did happen? Within 6 hours, that battle was over. The Battle of Adwa, the Ethiopian army annihilated the invading Italian army. Out of a total invading force of over 17,000, more than 4,000 soldiers were killed or missing. More than 2,000 Italian soldiers were taken prisoner of war by the Ethiopians, and hundreds of Eritreans who had fought alongside the Italians were also taken prisoner of war. And let's see how the New York Times chronicled this victory by the Ethiopians. This is a headline from March 4, 1896. Italy's terrible defeat. So it's not Ethiopia's great victory, it's Italy's terrible defeat, the article said. Also killed on the battlefield were Major General Giuseppe Arimondi, Italian general, and Major General Vittorio da Bormida. Taken prisoner of war was Major General Matteo Albertoni. The Ethiopians destroyed all the provisions for the Italian soldiers, and they seized 60 heavy guns. General Baratieri fled from the battlefield to preserve his life, and he was later accused of, quote, poor military strategy by the Italians. And he was court-martialed, although he was acquitted. This is another section from the New York Times article. Quote, the present campaign against the Abyssinians threatens to become one of the most disastrous in which the Italian arms have ever taken part. And what the final outcome will be, it would not be hard to predict. Okay, so you have, picture that scene. Ethiopians, an African army, marching 2,000 invading imperialist European soldiers, marching them hundreds of miles from Adwa back to Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia, which, by the way, was also founded by Empress Taitu Betul, the wife of Emperor Menelik, who actually fought alongside him, commanding 6,000 soldiers in the reserve force. She was on the battlefield as well, which is unusual in African settings, and I'll get back to that in a few seconds. And the Ethiopians put the prisoners to work. So you have the tables turned. You almost have a situation where the imperialists are getting a little taste of the medicine, how it literally feels to be enslaved. They were kept prisoner for many months, and it was only after the Treaty of Addis Ababa was signed, October 26, 1896, and Ethiopia forced Italy to pay millions of pounds in reparations before these prisoners were released. But before that, what else happened in Rome as a result of that defeat when the news arrived in Rome in March 1896? The Pope canceled a diplomatic banquet. There were riots on the streets in Rome, and the Italian government ultimately collapsed as a result of the victory of an African army over a European army, exploiting that myth of white supremacy and giving a rude shock to the Italians and to all of Europe. Because obviously now they start calculating this was not part of the equation for a European army to be defeated in Africa. And where else could it happen? In our other African empires. So obviously this was a great victory for Ethiopia and for all of Africa, a serious blow against white supremacy and colonialism. Unfortunately, this major victory was not duplicated at the same time in other African settings. Otherwise, the history of colonization in Africa would have been remarkably different, of course. So that brings us to the close of episode number 11. I just want to make my recommendations in terms of the reading and just a few other observations. So I recommend African Perspectives on European Colonialism by Adu Boahen, A-D-U, last name B-O-A-H-E-N. That is his book. I also recommend another book that he was one of the editors, and that is General History of Africa, Volume 7, Africa Under Colonial Domination, 1880 to 1935. So that is also edited by Adu Boahen. And How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. And some of the material for this podcast is from my own book, The Hearts of Darkness, How White Writers Created the Racist Image of Africa. I've re-edited and updated that book. So it is now with a publisher. And once I have a determination and a firm publication date, I will give everybody an update on that book. And obviously I will do a special podcast focusing on that book as well. I also want to announce that I do have a manuscript that I recently completed about the Battle of Adwa. And I want it to be like a graphic historical novel, which allows me some latitude and flexibility. So very soon I will be sharing that with you, my esteemed patrons, and I hope that I can get support for that as well, so that I can publish that and make that available. I think it's a story that needs to be told. I think that is a film that is waiting to be made, and maybe that is a project that we can all work on together as well with esteemed patrons. So that brings us to the close of episode number 11. I will also be doing at some point a series of specials that just focuses on African warriors, African generals who bravely fought on the front lines and resisted imperialism. And obviously, Empress Taitu will be one of them. Ya Asentawa, whom I mentioned earlier, of the Asante Empire. Nyehanda, who fought in Zimbabwe, which the European British colonials had called Rhodesia. Queen Zinga of the Congo Empire. And these are just a few of the women that I'll do special focus on in future podcasts as well. So thank you, everybody, the regulars and the new supporters. Stay well, be healthy, and see you next week.